It's time for Reason.
But politics has been changing dramatically because more and more people have disengaged themselves and turned themselves away from the federal politics because they don't feel they can do anything. If you notice media is changing dramatically. You're not following the mainstream anymore. You get a voice. What are we going to do with our tax rates? What are we going to do with our budget at the state level? We get to not only have the voice, but we get to do something about it.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
I love when a plan comes together. I love it. Welcome into the Voice of Reason. Good Thursday morning. It's the day we look forward to every single week. I know I say that every single day, but I got to get you pumped up and excited some way, right? I got to get you ready for a whole nother plan, a whole nother day of shenanigans, a whole nother day of politics, a whole nother day of you going to work, going through that grind, bringing home the meat, it's the caveman that's bringing home the animal into the cave and saying, yeah, we brought it home, we got it. And that's something we should be excited about. It's a Thursday, which means it is a pre-Friday celebration. It is the day that we get to look forward to every single week. It is the day before the celebration begins. We get to work hard, to party hard every day.
Winning.
And that's what it's all about. Welcome into the Voice of Reason. I am Andy Hoosier. It's an honor to have you along. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. If you want to join in, I'm available all over social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, at Hoosier Reason, along with the Facebook live feed. Welcome into the western part of the state and beyond. Welcome into Wichita. Welcome into KGPT TV and everywhere else that we're broadcasting from. It's great to have you along this morning. I wasn't going to start off with this today. I had some other things in mind that I had thought about, but I can't let this one go. I can't let this one slide. How many of you, let me see a show of hands, how many of you have had a pay raise in your salary? Not just like a nice little one-time bonus or something, but an actual pay raise, a legitimate pay raise, 2, 3, 4, 5% of your income over the last 2 years. Show of hands. Some, maybe. Maybe the Donald Trump tax cuts in December helped out a little bit with that, right? That you actually have the opportunity to make a little bit more money. Maybe the business you're working for is doing a little bit better, or they're potentially going to be doing better now that they have less taxes coming out at the federal level, both your income, personal income, and along with the business taxes, right? Show of hands, how many have actually seen a pay raise in the last 2 years? Now let me see a show of hands who have seen a pay raise from your salary, 2, 3, 4, 5%, 2 years in a row, where they bump up your salary 2 years in a row. Let me ask you, how many have actually seen that? Because I don't know very many individuals who their business has done so well, especially in the private sector or a small business or whoever, that's done so well that not only have you gotten a bonus or just a bonus, maybe you did get a bonus, which would be great, but not a bonus, but an actual salary increase, a substantial salary increase in the last 2 years. Let alone we do it 2 years in a row, right? Well, I get here this morning and I'm looking over some of the news and some of the latest from Topeka, and as we're talking about budgetary issues at the statewide level, as we have been for so long, because our legislators, the most important government that's in the country at the state level, state governments being extremely important, really more so than the federal government. We know the federal government screwed up. Are we going to be able to fix it? It's going to take a long time. We have our work cut out for us in order to make that happen. We need to focus on what we can adjust, and we can adjust relatively quickly, and that is the state government. While we're talking about major financial issues in the state, and by the way, I hope that you like the less amount in your paycheck because more's coming out at the statewide level as of the beginning of this year. I hope you're enjoying that aspect of your paycheck, right? Yeah. Even if you did get a pay raise, I don't know if it's really that substantial because now you're getting more money taken out from the state side. You're getting more back in from the federal side, so maybe that's offset it, but still, okay. You got a pay raise with more taxes coming out one way and more taxes coming back in the other way. It's really kind of offset itself. The Kansas Supreme Court, I still don't know where they get off thinking that they have the authority that they actually do. I don't understand where they think that they can get off talking about budgetary issues where they can get off talking about financial issues and where salary money should go. If you remember last year in the last legislative session, they came to the table, to the legislature, and said, please give salary hikes for everybody in the judicial branch because their salaries that had not increased in a long time. We need more salaries. They're struggling. They're suffering. They're below the national poverty level for a family of four, so on and so forth. And we need more money for judicial employees at the state level. And we gave it to them. A 2.5% salary increase. Now, is it much? Not necessarily. But do you grow beyond your means when you don't have enough income? When you're a business owner, do you give your employees more of their money because they haven't had a salary increase in the last 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 years? So even though you're not generating any more revenue or any more profits in order to give them that salary increase, you give it to them anyways, and then they come back to you again the next year and say, we need more, please give us another raise. Do you do it? How much of that can you actually maintain and sustain? Because the state government's budgetary decision should be made the same way that you make a decision as an individual, as you make a decision from the business side. And if you have the money, all the power to you. We'd love to help you out. Sometimes you have to go back and say, you know what? I'd love to, but I can't right now. As soon as things change financially, then I'll be able to do so. And that's a fair assessment, right? This morning, the Kansas Supreme Court's Chief Justice warned the state legislators yesterday below-market salaries of judicial branch employees that fueled high staff turnover and diminished applicant pools were detrimental to administration of justice in the state. How big, first off, I'm curious to see how big the department actually needs to be for the judicial branch and how many individuals that we do need, or is there an opportunity to consolidate some of the positions? I'm not saying that, no, start cutting them off and I'm not saying that, but I am saying that we need to look at this fiscally responsible. They did express gratitude, by the way, for the approval of the 2017 session of a 2.5% salary boost for judicial employees. He acknowledged the stark budget choices of the 2018 legislature, which includes the response from the legislatures to the Supreme Court decision of K through 12 education that's unconstitutionally inadequate. So even they come to us and say, hey, I know that we told you we need $600 million more in education. Or at least we need more money. You guys came up with that figure, and we're not going to disagree with it. We're just going to say it's inadequately funded or unsuitably funded according to the Constitution. But you need more money there. You need more money if we end up expanding Medicaid. You need more money for corrections officers who are wasting, by the way, and spending their life working 12 to 18-hour shifts at times in certain facilities in the state and still making less than many of the inmates who have jobs within the facility. To me, that's not right. They're protecting us, protecting the rule of law, trying to rehabilitate individuals who can't function in society, and they're making less than the inmates that they actually control, and they're making probably less than many of the judicial individuals in the judicial branch. But we need more money. I know all these other things are going on. I know that we are on the brink of being into another deficit and another debt in the state come the 2019 session. I know that we're talking about potentially raising taxes. I know that we're talking about detrimental financial issues in the state and the instability in the state of Kansas because it's been a long time since we've actually seen stability in the economy, and it's starting to come back up, but it's not there yet. But we need more raises. We really need more raises. If your employee came to you as a business owner, whether you're working a farm, whether you're working a small retail store, whether you're working a small restaurant, and an individual came to you and said, I know that you're on the brink of shutting your doors because it's really, really tough. No one's coming in and we're struggling. Or I know that agricultural commodity prices are really low right now. You're not making a profit. You're barely breaking even every year. But I really need you to give me a 20% increase on my salary. Or hourly wage. I know that you're giving me minimum wage right now. I know you need to bump me up $2 an hour. I know you're struggling right now, but this is below poverty line. This is not okay for me. I'm not able to make this right now. How do you respond? 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. I know exactly how I'd respond. I'd say, you know what? I will as soon as I can. End of story. I'd love to. I understand. I will as soon as I can. The state government, I tell you what, the legislatures if you comply with this, and I understand, yes, let's give them raises if we can, when we can. I saw the other story, how we're going to try and spend $150,000 on some kind of memorial or statue. Is it important? No, it's not important right now. Would it be nice? Sure, it would be nice. You do these kinds of things when you have the ability to do so. You don't just do it and then find a way to fund it on the back end. That includes, by the way, raising taxes and punishing the individuals that create the revenue from you in the first place. You're chopping off the hand that feeds you, and that's not okay. I'm sick and tired of hearing the government just do whatever the hell it wants to do, and then we just pick up the slack on the back end because, hey, we're the ongoing black hole of resources that we're just going to continue to feed you more and more and more whenever you ask for it. It's not going to happen any longer. And legislators, I tell you what, if you comply with this and you give them another one while we're talking about all the other budgetary issues, unless you're thinking of just paying for everything, expanding everything, and just raising another massive tax increase across the state and across the board for income, for business, for whatever, and then you're just saying that you never have to raise taxes again because that's the story we heard last session. If you plan on doing that, then fine. I guess you can go down that road. But if you're trying to consolidate and trying to figure out the budget without raising any more taxes, where will you draw the line? Where are you going to draw the line in the sand and say no more? Because the Kansas Supreme Court, after bullying you on education, now trying to bully you and give you the sympathy excuse for the salaries for judicial employees, over and over and over again, if they get whatever they want every single time they ask for it, they're going to be that spoiled kids that whenever they don't get that piece of candy, they're going to be throwing that temper tantrum. They're going to do it because they've never been told no. So they're going to continue to try it until you finally do tell them no and then throw a fit about it. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
You're listening to the Voice of Reason on the Mid-America Network.
Hey, good morning to you. Welcome back into the Voice of Reason. Appreciate you hanging out with us today on a Thursday morning. The pre-Friday celebration has begun. Let's finish off this week strong, shall we? Let's carpe diem all over this place, make it a positive one, so that way we can properly enjoy the weekend. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. It's very fascinating to watch the Kansas Supreme Court continue to advocate for more money, more money, more money, more money. All the special interests want more money, more money, more money. At what point, and now, I mean, granted, politics is 90% about finances and budgets and money. That's what it's all about. That's why we talk about it so much on this side, from tax rates to the revenue to the spending to trying to bring common sense back into the discussion when it comes to our budgetary expenses at the state, local, federal levels, whatever we do. One issue that's very concerning, though, that I did notice is there's been a lot of schools as of lately that have been going on lockdown or having issues, having bomb threats. And it's been kind of the ongoing societal norm, I guess, to think that it's okay to target children in schools. And we'll talk about that in just a second, because there's been another school lockdown as of yesterday or a couple of days ago, with some minors getting in trouble with possession of certain substances, and it goes right along with the bomb threats, I think, with the lockdowns, the threats to the school, and the target that society has on children. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. Let's go to the phones, though, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Scott.
Hey, Scott. How are you, sir?
Well, you were talking about taxes. Now, here in Wichita, the police state, they were trying to tax us, saying that, well, you know, the police need this, the police need that, and they wanted to tax us, but they weren't promising us any results as far as, like, drug reduction and coming into the city of Wichita or any other type of crime reduction. They just wanted to tax us. So taxing without any plan to reduce any type of crime, they just wanted the tax money. You know, they just wanted to get more money for the police state. So, I mean, they're trying to do a funny kind of tax thing when they say, hey, we're going to tax you, but we're not promising any kind of results.
how to, well, let me ask you this. What would you, if they came and they said that they had a plan to reduce or something, how would you want that to sound? What realistically to say that we know exactly how to stop a crime or how to stop X, Y, and Z? What does that sound like? What does that look like for them to know exactly how to do that? Because I don't know how to. And I don't know if they know exactly how to do that, other than just have more resources at hand to help take on the situations when they arise.
Okay, well now you're asking for money, but you're not promising for anything. You say, well, hey, I just want some money. So that doesn't want to tax you. But now I'm not promising you anything for you to tax money.
I don't know if that's. I don't know if that's how. Hold on, Scott. I mean, let's look at it realistically. I doubt that that's how they're actually approaching it and how they're saying it. We just need more money, and we're not going to guarantee anything's going to come out of it. We just want more. I mean, whether it's the resources available to them, whether it's actually getting, I don't know, more tools for them, more. I mean, I don't know what all they need.
What? I mean, they're not promising anything. What are they going to need more tools for?
Well, okay. That's I don't want to get too far off topic here, Scott, but I appreciate the sentiment. I will admit that I have not paid attention too terribly close to the comments that have been made by local law enforcement on them advocating for more finances, more money to their department. But if there are anything, and you're right. I mean, if we're going to go towards anything with more money, I want to make sure that it's spent efficiently. I have less concern about the law enforcement spending money inefficiently as I do politicians and corrupt government bureaucrats. And that's the point that I'm trying to make, is that it's okay. I haven't seen it. Yes, let's look over the budget and see what they're requesting, so what they can do with it. But at the same time, knowing that they're out on the streets, risking their lives every day, they're doing what they do, keeping us safe every day. They're the ones that, when these schools shut down and lock down, they're the ones that actually need to be there ASAP. Let me tell you a story, Scott, and for everybody else as well, that I don't know if you recognize this or realize this or not, but I don't know if I'm sure I've told the story at some point, but during my senior year of high school, we had an active shooter in my school, and we had the police officers there, and luckily the officer that was the in-school officer was there within 45 seconds of the lockdown, and the SWAT team was there within just a few minutes, because it was a very scary ordeal. It lasted over a few hours. What was it? It started at 10 o'clock. We did, I guess it was for about 6-7 hours. It was there, and in a small community with a whole 400, 500 students in the entire high school, one individual died, a good friend of mine. The law enforcement was there. They risk their lives every day. They need those resources. And if they want the more money, then let's look and see what they need the resources for. But I'm going to be more willing to give it to law enforcement than corrupt politicians who want salary hikes, who want more public education spending, who want government socialized program spending. I'm more willing to give it to the law enforcement than I am to the individuals that want to spend it on socialized programs that are unconstitutional. But I am with you in the sense that let's look at it and make sure that what they want to spend it on is something that will benefit the law enforcement to help them do their job. Let's go to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name? Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great, my friend. I tell you what, I'm sorry. Give me just a second. We're just going to the bottom of the hour here. Hang tight. Don't go anywhere. We'll get to you as soon as we come back. I didn't realize the time. Went a little long on that one. So hold on 1 second. We'll get to you here in just a second. Your thoughts and calls as well. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. Lots to get to today. Also, coming up on the show, State Representative Blake Carpenter going to be joining us in the 8 o'clock hour as we talk about what's happening at the state legislative session and some of the bills presented, some of the dialogue and debate that's happening as of right now for week number 2 of the session in the state of Kansas. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
Time for Reason.
If this is a victory for Democrats thinking they have the momentum again, then let them have it, because that's as far as they're going to go. In a state that was already won by Democrats, already predominantly blue, in a state where the Republican did not want to embrace current Republican trends. If you're not going to do that, then you're not going to win. End of story. It's very simple.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Hey, good morning to you. Welcome back into The Voice of Reason right here on the Mid-America Network along with KGPT TV, channel 2610. If you have the local cable here in the Wichita area, don't worry, Western Kansas, more potentially maybe coming for you very soon, and looking forward to that as well. Along at 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Had a caller wasn't able to get to before the bottom of the hour break. Apologize for that, so let's go back to them. Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, my name's Paul.
Paul, how are you, my friend?
I'm okay. Listen, I got something I want to say. I'm a really big follower of the Alex Jones show, and I follow your show early in the morning.
Thank you.
And I agree with the point that you're saying about increasing the police force in Wichita and Kansas, and but I disagree with the fact that they're not allowing public knowledge of the body cams, and the reason I say that is because this man that came in that called in and called a SWAT team in on this man,
sure,
and his son from Los Angeles, and they came in and this man reached for he was tied. He may have been loosening his boxer shorts or whatever. They kicked in the door on this man. Luckily, thank God, his son wasn't hurt. Thank God, his son wasn't hurt in this act. But they shot and killed this man, and they're not releasing this footage to the public, and they're not releasing it without a judge's order, and I think that's wrong. I think that should be public knowledge, and it should be allowed to anybody that wants to view that. They should allow that, and they should release the officer's name that shot this man, so that we know who this man is, I have a really big problem with this,
Sure. Well, here's the thing, and I agree. I think a lot of this stuff should start becoming to be made public. I like the idea of the body cams. I like the idea of transparency. I like the idea of, look, I mean, these individuals, and I have the utmost respect for law enforcement, for military personnel, and for what they do and for keeping us safe, because, I mean, we'd have complete anarchy in the streets if they weren't there, and I respect what they do. We also need to, as you mentioned, hold them accountable for their actions, and if they make mistakes, we just need to own up to it and say, hey, we're human. We can train all we can, but at the same time, under a situation, if something happens that where we reacted and it was more of a reaction than it was for our part of our training and the muscle memory, then let's own up to it and let's move on from there. And I want to be able to see those things. So I'm there with you. I will say, if it's a situation where it's under investigation still and where they're looking at it from the higher ups or from the chain of command or whatever the case is, I understand why some of the stuff isn't made public right away. I want them to do the investigation. I want them to come to the decision, and then I want it to be made public. So that way the public it's not one of those situations to where we're seeing the court cases, we're seeing the hearings, and then we're seeing the public outcry, and then it's the big catastrophe when it blows up and we, if we make a wrong decision for the decision afterwards. So I understand when it's made, when it's still not made public during an investigation, but I agree with you that after the investigation, let's open it up to the public and then let everybody see what actually happened and then move on from there.
Okay, I guess what I'm getting at is I agree with what you're saying wholeheartedly. If it's under investigation, by all means. But Take News came on and did an interview with this guy,
mm-hmm.
and he demanded money, said he had no money on his books, and blah 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 blah. But the point is that they're refusing to release this video footage, so that we, the public, can have our own opinion about what's going on.
Sure.
And with them running in on people, and hey, you know what I mean. And I have the utmost respect for the law enforcement and the SWAT community and what they do for our families and protecting our families by all means.
Sure.
But when Kate News goes on interview with this guy and he states that he has no money on his books and he's doing this and he wants to be hanged, and I think he gets 15 to 25 years per quote, 15 to 25 years for doing what he did, he's okay with it. Then that pretty much says it all right there, as far as I'm concerned. And why can't they release the video footage? Because what I feel is it was a poor judgment in the officers. I mean, come on, man. I mean, when there's light shining, they knew what he was doing.
Sure. Well, and look,
they have video footage of this man putting his hand in his waistband and coming up out of his bed, he was asleep in his bed.
Sure.
It's not the fact that he was running around his house with a gun. He was in his bed. They kicked in his door, rushed in his house, assaulted him. And what are you going to do? I mean, he's trying to figure out what's going on, and because his hand went up, and trust me, they have lights on their guns, on their assault rifles. They're very aware of what's going on in the room, and there was a mistake that was made. Period.
Sure.
The man should not have been shot by any means. There's other ways to handle that situation, and I don't feel that they handled it accordingly. And I think that should be made public knowledge. And because of the judge's order, it's not made public knowledge. You know, it's per judge's order, and man, that's just wrong. This is one of the few states. This is one of the few states in the nation that restricts that order, that has that order of not being made public knowledge. And that's wrong, man.
Well, and I agree with you, and I appreciate the call very much. I want to take another one before we run out of time here, but I will say that we're progressing slowly, baby steps. We have the body cams now. We were a little lagged on the body cams compared to some of the other states as well. So now we at least have body cams. Now let's start moving towards making it a little more transparent, and then we can start doing that. And look, again, I never like to judge law enforcement based on the situation that they're going into. I've never been in a situation to where I'm going into knowing that there could be potential threats. The same with the dumb kid from California that did the swatting, that called in the threat for the area, and the cops showed up thinking that there was a guy being held hostage, and that that he was holding his family hostage, that he had a gun, that he was severely dangerous, and that they didn't know what to go into. And when the guy comes out, they end up shooting him, and it's a terrible ordeal. I'm never going to judge in that situation personally, just because of the fact that no matter how much training you can do, if you have potentially life-threatening events right in front of you, or someone right in front of you that you were told was going to harm you in some way, shape, or form, then I have a very hard time trying to judge how I'm going to react in that situation. You can do all the training in the world in order to prevent yourself from making a rash decision, but sometimes you're just going to do so. But I agree with you in the sense, let's make it public. Let's see the information. Let's look at the body cam. Let's make a judgment for ourselves, and let's move on from there. And if we make mistakes, look, everybody's human. Everybody's human. Everybody's going to make mistakes. We're not machines. We're not going to do everything perfectly. And if they make a mistake, let's own up to it. The same with politicians. If you make a mistake, let's own up to it, and let's move forward. I don't like holding grudges. I don't like coming after somebody like that. I'm not one of those that holds a grudge on one side while protecting another. If you make a mistake, let's own up to it, and let's move forward. Let's figure out ways to make our community better. And I appreciate the call very much so, Paul, because that's a great point. Let's make our community a better place together. Let's do it together, and then we can actually start making our community great. Everybody, all the different communities, everybody within the communities. And I'm not just talking about Wichita. Anybody that's listening across the entire state right now, our communities, the only way we're going to fix it if we do if we change things at the local level in our communities. And that's one way that we can do it. So great point. I appreciate that. Let's go back to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Bill.
Bill, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great.
Good.
I just wanted to address that also on the release of the videos and stuff. You just answered your own question here when you said we should release it and let the public prejudge it. The reason they don't release it is because even this guy from California deserves a fair trial.
Sure.
And if the entire public looks at it and makes a judgment now, before they go to court,
right,
then he doesn't get a fair trial.
Exactly.
And then we may lose him in the system that way.
Exactly. And that's what I don't. And that's the point that I made earlier. Is let's make it available and make it public, but let's do it after the hearing and after they make their decision. So you're right. So we're not going in with a pre-notion of what the public wants or what the misconceptions may potentially be or whatever. Let's let the officials make the judgment on it, and then let's release it to the public so that way we can see what happened afterwards.
Yeah, afterwards it'd be fine. I mean, every second of it should be released, I think.
Right.
But this trial may be a year or 2 years before it's completed.
Sure.
And so we can't release it early. And on releasing the officer's name, transparency and everything is great. Unfortunately, there's so many people out there that would, like Antifa and Anonymous and other groups like that would put this guy's name and stuff out and would go online to ruin his credit, would attack him personally.
Sure.
Would put his address out, and they'd have people marching in front of his house and threatening his wife and children. that kind of, there's a certain amount of, right to privacy that this officer has also.
Right, exactly.
And with all these, with all the people that are out there that could cause him problems. I mean, at least giving time to have his wife and children move.
Hey, at least protect themselves, because if we had the pre-notion going into it before the court's even done their hearing or they make their decision and everybody knows about it, then you're right. We're putting the lives of that officer and the entire family in jeopardy, because you know that they're going to get the threats. They're going to have people come after him thinking that justice isn't done or isn't going to be done the right way. And it's going to cause a whole nother issue. That's why I agree with the information getting out, but it's got to be timed appropriately to where it doesn't put anybody else in jeopardy or it doesn't cause an uprising.
Yeah, that's true. And I don't know this officer, but I know thousands of other ones, and I don't know a single one that went to work every day and said, geez, I can't wait to shoot somebody. So I'm
exactly.
sure this guy is.
And that's the hard part. It breaks my heart. I don't know why. There's this notion that the law enforcement's going to go out and just go out to try to intimidate or try to bully somebody or try to harm somebody just because they have a badge and they have the opportunity to do so. Do some people get a power kick out of it? Sure, I'm sure they do. But at the same time, the reason that 99.9% of law enforcement puts a badge on every day is because they want to make their community a better place, and they're not out there to cause harm to anybody. These things are accidents, and a lot of these things are just reactions that were probably the wrong reaction at times.
I'm sure he feels absolutely horrible. First of all, that he had to take a life.
Sure.
And then secondly, that he took the wrong life. It was a mistake, not of his making, but of somebody else's. I guess as a last thought, I would say, because I have seen that 7-second video, that for God's sake, when you got guns pointed at you and you're being told to do something, now would be a good time to do it. Argue about it later.
Exactly. Bill, I love it, my friend. I appreciate it. Got to take a break. Got some other calls on the line. Don't go anywhere. I love all the phone calls this morning. Let's keep them rolling. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
Listening to The Voice of Reason on the Mid-America Network.
Welcome back into the program, wrapping up hour number 1 of The Voice of Reason. Great to have you along today on a Thursday. There are individuals, and we need to accept this, there are individuals in the world that want to cause harm, that want to do bad to others for whatever reason. It's sad, it's pathetic, it's angering, and they are not welcome in society. Let's just put it that way. I would say the majority of them do not have law enforcement badges on or uniforms on. Just saying. Now, just like anything else, like with terrorist threats or with anything else, we have to adapt to society as they try to change their tactics, whether it's trying to rob a store, whether it's trying to break into a home, whether it's trying to, do whatever they end up doing. And one of them is called that swatting, where that for whatever reason, individuals will call and prank call the police and say that there's a hostage situation and cause an issue. And we saw that issue with happening here just a while ago here in Wichita with the swatting from California calling and saying that the individual was holding his family hostage, killed his wife, and was holding the kids or whatever the situation was. Now the police are aware of these sorts of things, and they're trying to adapt. Here's the latest story 2 days ago from the Wichita Eagle. To show how terrible law enforcement is, when Overland Park police received the hoax call, they thought of the Wichita swatting situation. The call sounded serious. A man told Overland Park dispatchers that he shot his wife and would shoot police officers if they went to his house. It was about 8:30 a.m. on Monday. There was no background noise, and officers believed the call was 100% real. With lights and sirens on, the officers with the Overland Park Police Department went to the caller's report. In the home, they were ready for the possible hostile person who had already threatened to harm them. In the back of their minds, though, they were concerned about the potential swatting situation where Andrew Finch had died, 28-year-old, and was shot unarmed by police officers. The Overland Park Police tactic units were en route. They surrounded the home. They ended up discussing and having conversation with the individuals inside, which was the dad and 2 sons. They made contact with the wife via telephone. They ended up searching the home. They found no blood. They found out they were pranked, and no one was harmed in the process. That's the story we're not talking about today. While law enforcement may have its issues, at the same time, again, I'm not going to judge someone based on the situations that they're in on a daily basis. And when we see something like this where they've done their job properly, we need to raise that up and applaud that as well and say, you know what? Let's always have that concern in the back of our minds, and let's applaud them for how they handled that situation at the same time, shall we? That's what I say. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Let's take some more phone calls as we wrap up this hour, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, happy Thursday.
Hey, how are you, sir?
Well, you might have to hold me over the break because you need to be schooled on the situation.
Schooled on the
Okay,
situation.
first-
Well, you got 2.5 minutes, and that's plenty of time, so let's roll with it.
Okay. As regards finding out the officer's name right now, the man just killed someone. That's not an easy thing for anyone. It's especially difficult for a police officer,
Sure.
especially when you find out it was unjustified based on all of the facts, not based on what you had when you pulled the trigger. So the man's got to go through counseling. He's got to deal with having killed someone.
Oh, sure. He's got emotional stress that he's going to have to go through from now to really the rest of his life. If he took someone's life, and that's not easy for anybody, no matter what we may think, just because they're wearing a uniform.
Yep. And he's waiting to find out if it was justified shooting or not. They may look at the facts, look at the film, and say, "Hey, wait a minute, you shouldn't have done that." So he may be criminally charged.
Sure.
And you never want to jeopardize the evidence until a decision's been made whether to charge or not. Now, regardless of whether he's charged, when the family sues, like they always do, their attorneys can see all of the tape. They can see all the angles. They can see everything the police department has. I don't need to know that. If that's put on the TV, I might think something happened that didn't. I might say this or that. It's not our job to judge. The man did what he thought was right based on the circumstances he was faced with. If he was right, the district attorney will determine that. If he was wrong, he'll be charged.
Well, exactly.
It's just that simple. We need to keep our nose out of their business because you have no idea. You're there with a rifle. You think someone's armed. They go for their belt, which is where a lot of people keep their gun. You shoot. You don't wait.
Well, and that's the situation. That's a great point, Myron. We're running out of time, so I got to let you go. But you're absolutely right in the fact that if I was in that situation, and if anybody's in that situation, then your reaction is protect yourself and trying to eliminate the situation altogether. And that if that is pulling the trigger, then that's pulling the trigger. They're going to go through mental issues. They're going to go through the emotional issues. They're going to go through the fact that they ended up taking someone's life, and they're going to have therapy, and they will be judged on their actions, whether it's justified or not. I want to see the information. I do want to see the body cams, and I want to see it afterwards. I want to see it outside of the media because the media is always going to manipulate it for their own personal and political agenda. But I do want to see it. But again, I want to see it after the fact, after it's judged, after the case is closed, and we move on from there so that way we can learn on what to do from next time. Hour number 2, The Voice Reason, coming up. Stay here.
It's time for Reason.
But politics has been changing dramatically because more and more people have disengaged themselves and turned themselves away from the federal politics because they don't feel they can do anything. If you notice media is changing dramatically. You're not following the mainstream anymore. You get a voice. What are we going to do with our tax rates? What are we going to do with our budget at the state level? We get to not only have the voice, but we get to do something about it.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Good morning to you. Welcome into the Voice of Reason. Hour number 2 of the Voice Reason right here on the Big Talker KQAM along with KGPT TV channel 2610. It's a Thursday. It's great to have you along as we start off a brand new day. It's the pre-Friday celebration. Starting off almost a new weekend. It's time to carpe diem. It's time to lay it on the line. It's time to get her done so that way we can enjoy the weekend, maybe even a 3-day weekend. What do you say? Welcome into it. 316-721-8255, 721-TALK. If you want to join in, we're all over the board, whether it's TV, radio, online, for the social media. No matter what you're looking at doing, we're there, and you can check us out no matter what. Let me ask you a question. When you want to do the best at what you do, whether it's a career choice, whether it's being a family man or a family woman or a family other, if you self-identify as something different, if you want to become the athlete, if you want to become the major talk show host, if you want to become the podcaster, if you want to become the rock star, if you want to become the It goes on. What do you want to be and what do you want to do? And how do you get there? You practice. You experiment. But one of the most important things that you can do when you're trying to excel in whatever field that you're working on is you try and look at the ones above you and you see what they're doing. I'm a competitive kind of guy. I love being able to see my podcast downloads. I love being able to see my competitors. I love being able to expand and feel like the show's growing and feel like that what I'm doing is that we're doing it productively. When I'm at home, I'd like to make sure that my family house is in order, that we're taking care of the family properly, that we're doing the right thing. I'm a very competitive kind of guy, and if I see someone with more, if I see someone doing more, if I see someone with better stuff, if I see someone happier, I want to figure out what they're doing, and I want to do that myself because I want to do the best that I can. I want to be at the top, and no matter what I'm doing in my career, in my personal life, in my family, it doesn't matter. I want to do that. And I know most individuals are like that as well, that you idolize a certain individual or you look towards your idols or you look towards the top athlete that's in the NFL or the top athlete that's in baseball or the ice skater, or you become that artist and you see the people drawing and painting things at the different conventions or art shows or on TV. Remember that art show that used to make you fall asleep because you used to do all the oil paintings on TV? The band that you idolize, that you love. When you want to do something great and you want to be at the top, you look to see what they're doing. You watch their styles. You watch their techniques. You watch their mannerisms. You watch their home life. You try and figure out what makes them happy on a daily basis. That's what you do. In the state of Kansas, we're number 38 when it comes to growth of people moving into our state. Number 38 in the entire country, and that's not acceptable. As a state of Kansas, we should be in the top 10. We should be growing hugely. We should be growing the way Texas is growing, really. We should be having the opportunities of industry wanting to flood into our borders because of our low tax rates. We should be having individuals flooding into the state of Kansas, seeing the opportunity with less tax burden, less government oversight, and a Republican deep red state to where we don't over-regulate the people on a daily basis. That should be our motto. That should be our goal, and that's not what we're doing in the state. The latest study from the U-Haul data across the country, Kansas was number 38 when it comes to growth for 2017, as U-Haul's data, with their data analyzing the past year's migration trends. Year-over-year arrivals of one-way U-Haul tracking rentals dropped by 3%, while departures dropped by 2% from Kansas's 2016 numbers. Texas was number one in growth for the state for the second year in a row. Florida, Arkansas, South Carolina, and Tennessee rounded up in the top 5, and North Carolina ranked number 7 and continuing on a strong growth movement in the Southeast. The question is, are we going to mock what they're doing? Are we going to look at what they're doing as an example, or are we going to shun away from it? When Texas is number one for 2 years in a row because they don't have any income tax. When they're number one for growth 2 years in a row because they're a deep red Republican state that does not tax or does not overregulate their people, I wonder why that they're number one in the country for people wanting to move to that state. That's the kind of mindset that we have to have. When it comes to industries, are we educating our youth enough in order for them to feel comfortable wanting to go into a career path here in the state of Kansas, or are they trying to go elsewhere because they want to leave? Our higher education, are we teaching them the necessary tools and resources they need in order to get the career or the certificate or the graduation that they want in order to feel comfortable moving right into a job and making a decent salary to take care of their family? Are we stable enough in the state to think that no matter what tax rates may change because of our government not knowing what the hell to do with their budget, that they may continuously raise taxes on a daily basis or a yearly basis or whatever they end up doing, that we feel stable enough to be able to compensate, to be able to manipulate our budgets and be able to continue to thrive as a state? I don't see that opportunity right now. And it's sad because we are the heartland. We are the greatest state in this nation. And I will defend that till the day I die. I love the state of Kansas. But at the same time, if our bureaucrats, if our legislators do not allow us to thrive and grow with less taxes, less regulation, less government oversight, less government programs, less government regulation, then we're not going to do well. Businesses will not want to come here. Students will not want to remain here. And that's what we're seeing. The latest story that I've seen, Kansas universities and community colleges are facing falling enrollments while investments in technical education and driving a boost for training programs. Kansas Board of Regents President and CEO mentioned earlier this week that enrollment has fallen over the past 2 years at several four-year universities, including Kansas State University. They said that there was a concern because it makes it more difficult for educators to meet their goal of getting degrees or certificates in the hands of at least 60% of Kansas adults. Let me ask you something. It's their goal, and that's a good goal to have. You can have a goal. The university can have a goal of trying to excel at being able to educate the number of students. Should there be a goal of how many they have to as compared to the budget for the university? And let me phrase it a different way. You see a utility company, a water company, an electricity company, a gas company in the community. Should they have a quota for what they have to hit each year or each month in order to say, okay, we're making profits, we have to hit X amount of quota, or else we're going to lose profits? No. It's a utility. It's a public service. They're there for the ones that choose and pick it up. Now, for when it comes to utilities, it's kind of mandatory if you live in certain zoning laws, but I digress. You should have the choice to say, you know what, I want to pick up that electricity, or you know what, I don't want to. I want to be able to put the windmill in my backyard, or I want to put the solar panels on my roof, or I just want to go without electricity because I have the ability to do that. Maybe that's my religious belief. That's maybe my personal choice of wanting to live off the grid for whatever reason of my doing, because I'm scared, because I just don't want to pay it, because of whatever. I should have the choice to do that. Water. You would think you would have the choice to do so. You know what? Yeah, I want to pick up city water. Or, no, you know what? I don't want to pick up city water. I'd like to drill a well in my backyard and use my well water because I don't want to take the city water. I want to make sure it's not contaminated. I want to make sure whatever. I want to drill my own well. I want to have that right. Right now in the state of Kansas, we really don't have that right because of the zoning laws. If you live within a city, you must have the city water. I don't understand that one, but that's another discussion for another day. But you get my point. The quotas for the utilities as a public service. Why are we making public services mandatory instead of optional? Should we have it optional? Yeah, we should say, you know what? We're providing a service. If you choose to choose it and pick it up, then that's fantastic. We'd love to have you. We'll take care of you. If not, then you know what? It's your own responsibility and figure it out yourself. That should be the way we actually operate. We don't operate that way. And then that goes to the same with universities. Why is it almost mandatory by default? They don't make it mandatory. But why is it mandatory by default? By the way society has crafted this situation, by the way universities have controlled the dialogue of saying when you graduate high school, you must, 100%, you must go to college. You must get that degree. And when everybody gets that degree, then it's going to be useless. But still, then you can flip burgers at the local fast food joint with that degree because that's how good that quality of that degree is going to be because everybody has it. And when everybody has it, then it really makes it irrelevant. So you need to go to the step beyond. So guess what? Now you need to spend more money in order to get that higher degree. So that way you can be above a step beyond everybody else. And then you'll marginally be better. And then the farther you go, then you can marginally be a little bit better more and more and more until you're spending 10 years of your life in college and now you're $500,000 in debt. Is that the way society is going today? Because now everybody's panicking what we're going to do. We have so much money being sunk into our higher universities, to our colleges. And look, I'm not against university at all. And don't get me wrong. I think that they're very valuable. I think that many individuals that want to go into certain careers absolutely need them. The problem I have with universities, especially four-year universities and state universities, is the fact that now the first 2 years, you're not even studying the event or the program that you want to study because you're taking remedial classes that you just learned in high school. Because they think that they can get away with it. I have a problem with that. When the prices continue to skyrocket over and over and over and over again, I have a problem with that. I have a problem with the government benefiting from it on both ends by granting the state university money and then getting the tuition revenues back to the government, and then at the same time subsidizing the students to where the students are in the private sector's in debt while the government's getting it on both ends. I'm not okay with that anymore. But the universities are panicking because enrollment's dropping. Millions and millions and millions of dollars falling into our state universities, and no one wants to go anymore. Students that complete some college have better health outcomes. They earn higher salaries, according to, by the way, the CEO of the Board of Regents for the state of Kansas. They make our businesses more competitive. So if we don't have the enrollments coming in and we're not also improving our graduation rates, we won't have as many competitors with who, in the end, have degrees. Does this fall into the category of why people are leaving the state? Enrollment dropping at our state universities in Kansas for 2 years in a row now. Where are they going? What are they doing? Are we realizing that maybe we don't need to get into debt? Are we trying to work to pay things off before we get into debt? Or are we just leaving this state all around because we don't see the opportunities here? I want to hear from you. 316-721-8255. Let's go to the phones. Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, Andy, this is Paul again.
What's going on, Paul?
Hey, listen, the reason I'm calling again is because I'm a Texas transplant here to Wichita.
Sure.
And I grew up in Texas, in Houston, as a matter of fact. And I went to IBEW electrical school there for 7 years. And one thing I've noticed about Kansas is there's not a big technical school here. There's the opportunity is not here.
Exactly.
There's technical schools here, but they don't make it. There's so much of an emphasis on college degrees that they're not pushing the technical, and without electricians and plumbers, and there's pride to be taken in these trades. Believe me. You look at Sweden and Holland and the Netherlands. They push these trades because there's pride in those trades in those nations and in those countries, and
we forgot that.
We're forgetting it over here.
We really are.
Yeah.
Paul, I appreciate it. I got to take a break, but you're right. And you actually stole the words right out of my mouth, because that's exactly what we need in this state. When we're number 38 in the country for the job opportunities and for growth, because people coming here or lack thereof, and we've dropped 3% over the last couple of years, it's time for us to look and see what opportunities we're missing. And Texas has huge opportunity for trade schools. Other states have huge opportunity for trade schools, because you're right, the craft is there, the opportunity is there. We're not seizing it, which is why some people don't feel that we have that opportunity in the state of Kansas. If we're going to look at our role models, if we're going to look at our idols, if we're going to look at that rock star and what they're doing and why they're succeeding and what they're doing that makes them so great, we need, as the state of Kansas, to be looking at other states to see what can we be doing to create that opportunity for individuals to want to stay here in the state of Kansas. And one of those opportunities could be those trade schools. We'll talk about that when we come back. Your thoughts and calls as well. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason. Question of the day: how do we start making the growth of Kansas happen again? We're number 38 in the country for 2017, at least according to the U-Haul data that they track for one-way tickets with a U-Haul truck traveling to certain states and recommuting and relocating across the country. The migration trends in Kansas falls to number 38, which is down 3% from the year prior. How do we make that change? Does it have to do with the opportunities in the industry, or is it just because people don't see, I don't know, people just see us as it's Kansas? I hope not, because I don't feel that way about Kansas, and we need to find some ways to get more people here. Let's go to the phone, shall we? 721-8255, 721-TALK. Good morning. What's your name?
Good morning. This is Sean.
Sean, what's going on, sir? I'm living the dream, my friend.
It is. It's a wonderful day. Hey, this technical college thing, or technical school, and what trade school.
Yes.
I've been saying for years and years and years, we've devalued education in America for those that do go to college, in exchange for, devaluing the value of your plumber and your electrician. And we need those people. They can make an honest living. In fact, they can make a real good living if they have good managerial, personal skills, and salesmanship skills. But here's something. We've got a wonderful technical school on the west side, or on the east side, called Wichita Area Technical College. Mm-hmm. And it was built up in a private public partnership between the aircraft manufacturers. They pumped in millions and millions of dollars because they needed people with quote unquote technical skills. Imagine that. So they said, we need it so bad that we'll do it. So anyway, they built it up. It's a beautiful program. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. It's successful. Classrooms are full. It's hard to get into it, is my understanding, because enrollment is so good. So what now happens over at WSU? They swoop in and say, hey, why don't we get involved in this? And you can go to this school, do this, and we'll make sure that for a few $10,000, you'll also get a bachelor's degree. So what are they doing? They see an opportunity, which I don't have a problem with.
Sure.
But they see an opportunity to save themselves from a need that's already taken care of.
Exactly.
These kids that are going to that school are not asking for a bachelor's degree. The manufacturers, they're not asking for a bachelor's degree. They're asking for students that can weld, do electronics, can do technical skills, and WSU sees that as a threat. So they're going to take over. They've been talking about this already. This isn't conspiracy theory. In fact, it may already be partially done, where they are actually taking over WATC. And I think that's a travesty, because what's going to happen is the technical side of that program over there is going to be phased out in favor of a bachelor's degree.
Sure. Well, and it is actually starting to happen. I mean, we've talked with Governor Brownback, because he had led a lot of that change to where it's not really a taking over of, but a partnership to where they're working together in order to be able to get the trade aspect of it, and then the certificate of the bachelor's degree, whatever they want to, as well, and then having the credits work together or something, and however they're trying to blend the two. But Governor Brownback actually led that charge and has been working to try and not have one overtake the other, but work as a partnership to where they can work coincidingly together. And I don't see a problem with that per se. I am concerned I'm concerned with you.
A benefit. I don't see a benefit to Wichita Area Technical School to offer bachelor's degrees, because
Sure.
Those students go in there, they're not bachelor, they're not 4-year college degree students. They didn't go there for that.
That's the point, that they went to a technical school.
Don't
Sure.
want that. They don't want the manufacturers. They don't need that. They need kids that can do a specific task.
Sure. I agree. Sean, I love it, my friend. I'm right there with you. Some may want it, which I'm glad, I guess, that opportunity's there. But you're right. A lot of them that go to a trade school aren't going there saying, hey, why the heck did I get my bachelor's degree as well with that? We'll talk about this. There's some funky numbers when it comes to education, higher education, and technical trade schools when we come back. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
Don't take money, don't take fame.
When a headline just isn't enough,
Is that all you got?
it's time to wake up the right way.
All right.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, 1480 AM and 1025 FM, KQAM.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason right here on KQAM, along with our brand new, this is what, day number 3. Day number 3 at KGPT TV. Channel 2610, the InfoWars Network. Welcome aboard for those guys. We've actually had some callers this morning already that listen to the TV station, and we appreciate that very much. So welcome aboard for you guys. Advancing conservatism in the state of Kansas and the ways that we can hold our very own government accountable. That's what it's all about. Coming up in hour number 3, by the way, real quick, State Representative Blake Carpenter going to be joining us at 8 o'clock talking about the legislative session, what's happening, what bills have been introduced, and what to debate and dialogue on this weekend to come. Also at 8:30, wrap it up. We always have, we've been trying to every Thursday have a representative from somewhere from the governor's office. And today we're going to be having the brand new secretary for the KDHE, Kansas Department of Health and Human Services, Mr. Jeff Anderson. He's going to join us at 8:30, wrapping up the show today. 721-8255-721-TALK. Let's go right back to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, this is Myron.
What's going on, Myron?
Just 2 quick notes for you. One, forgot to do advance work, but this evening at 7 p.m. at the Builders Association building at 710 North Main, there's going to be a presentation for the public on the Convention of States, which is the article of the Constitution where if things get bad enough in D.C., the states can get together and reestablish their sovereignty and get a grip on Washington, D.C. So it'll be a real interesting opportunity. A lot of people misunderstand what it is, and one of the leaders of the state movement here in Kansas will be presenting and answering questions. So it's a real good opportunity. Didn't get very much advance notice, which I'm sorry. And the other thing that a lot of people may not know is the legislature and the governor have a program where if you're still in high school and you want to go to a technical school, you can do that, and the state will pay the tuition while you're in high school. And if you've listened to Dr. Bardo, the joint effort of the technical school and WSU, if you want to get, you want to learn to be a diesel mechanic, whatever they teach, you go there 2 years, you get your associate's degree, you go to work. Mm-hmm. If you want to be, if you want to go on to college, you can. But the other thing is you can go 2 years and learn a skill and pay for college if you want to go on to college.
Sure.
I've got a friend, he's a mechanic, and his son became a diesel mechanic. And diesel mechanics is very important to our transportation of trucks and foods. He makes really good money, and he loves working on cars.
Sure.
So we need to encourage. If you have a skill, like you want to work on cars, you want to work on airplanes, get the technical skills. If you want to go to college, get the technical skills so you can pay for college.
You can pay for college and not have to rack up all the crazy amounts of debt. That's a really good point, and I'm glad we have. I mean, some of the incentives. I think we're on the brink, and as I've used the example of trying to change things up a little bit for our industries in Kansas, we're right on the brink of really great, huge opportunities and possibilities here. We're just not quite there yet. And a program like that, to where you can go to a technical school and you can get some trade school, get a trade to be able to work your way through college, or whether you just want to take off with that with a career while you're in high school, that's a huge opportunity, and we should be utilizing that and mentioning it to every single one of our high school students in the entire state, so that way they can start utilizing this.
And then of course, I got to put in my little dig. If we had a better tax climate for business in Kansas, we wouldn't have some of these problems.
Well, there we go. That's a great point as well. Myron, I appreciate it. I appreciate the call. You're absolutely right. Let me run down some numbers for you here, just for an example, to try and reinforce this point. Because everybody, I love the fact that I bring up the topic, and the first thing that comes to mind with every caller that's called in is said, hey, we need more technical schools. We need more trade schools. And by the way, listener Joe on Facebook brings up a good point. WSU has owned to the WATC for the last year, and the enrollment continues to grow year over year. They see huge opportunity there, but WSU over the last year, it is official. Governor Brownback did create that plan, but WSU does, I guess, technically own now WATC. So there is that program. I don't know if they want to, hopefully they don't start weeding out the technical side of that, but they just try and reinforce as additional classes to where students can go there and specifically go to get a trade. Because let's run down some numbers just for a minute. We're all about facts. We're all about statistics. According to Business Insider, the cost of college has increased by 260% between 1980 and 2014. 260%. 75% growth and increase in tuition in the last 16 years between year 2000 and 2016. And before we go any further, let's raise our hand and say, let's remember who was in office these last 16 years. An establishment Republican and a progressive liberal. That's why the tuition increased. They saw the opportunity. Do you remember the interview that that Congress did, that the Senate did to Betsy DeVos when she was interviewing to head up the Department of Education? It had nothing to do with education, had nothing to do with Common Core, had nothing to do with the curriculum. It had nothing to do with the way college actually should be. The questions they were asking Betsy DeVos at the federal level for the Department of Education was, the Department of Education is a multi-billion-dollar bank account. Can you handle that kind of money? Can you handle the requirements of the DOE to take care of millions of individuals with their student loans and their grants and the billion-dollar bank account that is the Department of Education? That's their question because that's their concern. It's not about the education. It's not about the curriculum. It's not about the quality. It's about the fact that the government's making billions and billions of dollars off of students getting into debt with student loans, granting money to the universities to pay back because it is a state-run or a government-run university. It is the money coming into the multi-billion-dollar bank account that is the Department of Education. Cost of education's risen 260% since 1980 and risen 75% already just in the last 16 years. At the same time, 60% of students that go on to college won't go through their curriculum within the 4 years. It's longer for the 4 years or they drop out completely. Out of the ones that do actually graduate, only 40% of those suffer underemployment, meaning that they can't even get a job in the curriculum or in the field that they wanted to do. They came out, they're unemployed, they're trying to find something. Is college sound like a good idea right now? Well, we hear the universities, the state universities all over the state and in other states as well, complaining about the lower enrollment. People are beginning to wake up and realize the fact that you're not going to make a total living just off of going and getting your liberal arts degree. I'm sorry, it's not going to work. Now, of course, if you're a doctor, if you're a lawyer, if you're an engineer, if you're a specialist in some degree, absolutely you're going to need your college. And I'm not saying that you don't. But we've talked about the mindset of society for such a long time that what's been the talking point over the last few years? We're losing the blue collar. We're losing the blue collar. The white collar is going to be America. Pretty soon we're not going to have any kind of manufacturing. We're not going to have any type of labor. We're not going to have any type of X, Y, and Z. And the little bit that we do, we're going to import people with green cards and visas in order to do it for us because we as Americans are going to be the white-collar society that works in an office and does the paper pushing and are the CEOs where we outsource all of our labor. We're not going to have any more blue-collar jobs, and it's just not the case. They've talked about it for years. Since I started studying politics in high school, I've heard that we're moving towards the idea of lack of no more blue-collar jobs in the country, and everybody's going to go after white-collar, and you better start getting your degrees, and you better have that college certificate, or else you're going to fall behind, and you're going to be flipping burgers at McDonald's. And the fact is that if everybody has that college degree, and everybody wants to be that paper pusher, you're going to have that college degree just to be able to flip burgers at McDonald's. But then if we outsource all the jobs, then you're not going to have anything left over at all. Because there's only a finite number of paper-pushing jobs that you can have and make a sustainable living on it. That's just the fact of it. When did we forget the art and the appreciation of the art of a craft? Of being a diesel mechanic. Of being an aviation mechanic. Of being able to work with your hands and working with wood crafting. Or a cabinetry. Or a plumber. Or whatever. When did we say that that's above our pay grade and I don't want to do it anymore? When did we get to that point? Because that's what built this society. We are a society not of the white-collar the business owners. Some are. But we are a society historically built on the backs of workers. The laborers are the ones that crafted this nation. The laborers that were still the plantation owners and the farmers and the owners and the CEOs of the businesses, but they built their own homes. They built societies. We see the construction. We see the Western expansion. We see the railroads. We see the skyscrapers. We were built on the backs of laborers because they valued what they were crafting. They valued what they were doing. The average tuition, post-secondary tuition, would run an average of $9,438 a year the time Ronald Reagan was in office. $9,000 for school. The very same thing today, or at least when this was done in 2015, or back in 2015 when the latest numbers were reported, $23,872 as an average for college tuition. $23,800. Now, I don't know about you, but $23,000 to almost $24,000 with 60% of students not even completing the graduation, and then 40% of those that do graduate being underemployed, not being able to pay their bills because they're so far in debt, with $23,000 a year times 4 years at least. I don't know about you, but that's extremely expensive. For $23,000, you could buy a brand new car every year for the next 4 consecutive years. You can buy 20,000 used books and teach yourself the secrets of the universe by yourself without a college professor telling you how to do it. For $23,000, you could literally spend a full third of each year taking Carnival cruises, if that's what you choose to do. The National Student Clearinghouse enrollment in college declined every single fall between 2011 and 2016. Enrollment peaked at 20.6 million individuals back in 2010, but by autumn, dropped back down to 19 million. We've had a small peak, and then they began to diminish again because it's too expensive, and we're realizing that the value of it's being diminished, and then we're not seeing the opportunity for trade schools. It's starting to, but the state of Kansas still has some work to do in order to make this happen and a reality here in the state of Kansas. Let's go back to the phone, shall we? 721-825-5721. Talk. Good morning. What's your name?
Nate.
Nate, what's going on, my friend?
Oh, not much. Well, the part I'd like to comment on is, I think we still have way too much government subsidies for this. Everything that government subsidizes is done in excess. So
sure.
I agree with the huge debt and everything else that is ridiculous, but that's because we have government subsidies, so they raise the price, so the government forks over more, so the people fork over more.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
But I think one of the biggest causes of decline, I think there's a whole lot of people that seeing what these colleges are turning their kids into, well, young adults, they're not kids. Wish we'd quit calling them that.
Well,
but
they portray themselves as kids. They don't consider themselves adults until 30.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's part of the problem. We're raising this generation and teaching them in college that, woe is me, I can't handle anything that doesn't fit my worldview, that doesn't fit what I hear.
Sure.
We're turning them into a bunch of pansies and wimps that can't face society, and we're sending our children off to be communistically indoctrinated to become a leftist and turn against their own families. Why?
It's a great point. It's a great point. And when you see that, we're seeing, not to knock on any specific university in Kansas, but we've seen universities where they encourage the to be apologetic for having your quote-unquote white privilege, to have the name tags where you don't put your name on it, but you name the pronouns of which you'd like to be described as, so that way you don't get offended when someone assumes your gender. That's what we've gotten to the point of in universities, to where they have after the elections, they have their cuddle therapies or their animal therapies or their coloring book therapies because they couldn't handle the stress of the election and the results of that. They postponed tests in some universities across the country and their midterm exams because of the elections and the post-traumatic stress of the emotional distress that some of the students went through. That's what we've created in universities, and I don't want to take my kid to it.
Exactly. That's kind of what I feel too, because I'm college educated, but it was at a little different era. But where we're at, I'm not seeing a whole lot of benefit, and we have to send them off to college, like you were saying, to be so confused they can't even tell the difference between a male and a female.
Exactly. It's a scary deal. Hey, I appreciate the call, my friend. I want to sneak another one in before we take a break, but really good points. Not only we're seeing the university decline, and there's many factors to it, one of them being the financial obligation of getting into debt and the subsidies that go along with it. Absolutely. And you're right. The other point is, I just don't want to go through that. Now, some will say that, if you go and become the doctor, you're going to that field, you don't really feel or see a lot of the politicalness and the PC-ness that happens at universities, and that's probably true as well. But if you're involved and you go to a sorority or a fraternity, or you're involved in some way, shape, or form within the school, and you're a little bit more involved other than staying in the library for 20 hours a day trying to study, then you do see these things, and it's very corrupting to the young minds that are forming, that are trying to learn about the world, and that are open to great ideas, and then are being bombarded with this type of mentality. I have my 3-year-old daughter, and I would not want to take her to one of those universities. I'm sorry. Let's go back to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, good morning, sir. Drew.
Drew, what's going on, sir?
I'm just trying to avoid all the ick going around.
It's hard to do. Be careful with that one.
Yeah, truly. Hey, 2 points for you. Number one, if you look at our economic cycle, you will see that we subscribe to the absolutely insane Keynesian model of let's borrow and spend since after Reagan. They've done it with they did it with appliances for cash. They did it with clunkers for cash.
Sure.
They did it with buy a house. Let's go ahead and get a bunch of people who don't have the money and get them into houses because we want their cash. Then we took a big hit on that one for cash. And now they're running out of things Because if you start looking at the cycles of things, majority of people's earning capacity is by the time that they're 35 or 40. Well, guess what? The baby boomers hit. They bought their houses. They're not buying more houses.
Sure.
So they had to find something else to generate money. Hey, what's the next big group coming up? Millennials. Everybody needs to go to college.
Exactly.
And we need to get their money.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
It is the second largest debt in the entire country outside of mortgages. It just peaked credit card debt in the country, what was it, last year, a couple years ago, with the amount of debt that individuals have. And it's starting to become the number one defaulted on debt by students because of how much debt they're in. And the crazy part is it's subsidized by the government. So every time they default on it, then we as the taxpayer, Joe Schmo, gets to take up that debt every single day. So we talk about free college. We're already really giving them free college through socialized programs by subsidizing it through federal aid.
Obama promised that he'd do something about student loan debt, but he didn't dare because it would have cratered the economy. You saw what happened when we had to take over the housing loans. But here's the good side to this, and then you've talked about it already, and that's the trades. We need to start looking into people that want to go into the trades, going in and helping work with that idea. Because if you take a serious look at it, you get in there, you start making money. Your earning potential is immediate. You're going to make as much as most of the folks who are going and getting a degree in college. And here's one of the things that most people don't consider. That's automation.
Exactly.
If you start looking at some of these jobs like paralegal, journalist, in your profession, so many of these things, any of these things that are repetitive, any of these things that can be outsourced.
You can do those on a specific trade. I went to a broadcasting school as a trade after 2 years of the university, got my taste of it, and I didn't appreciate it and didn't want to do it anymore. I went to a trade school, went into media broadcasting, found out radio and TV, conveniently now since we're on both now. So it kind of worked out appropriately, and it works. So, Drew, I completely agree. I appreciate it. We got to take a break. We're way late on one. I do want to say, though, real quick, that as the trade schools, we're seeing them across the nation, 2006 to 2007, trade schools increased enrollment by 6%. By 2013 to 14's year, it increased by 12% with enrollment. Trade schools are growing while the state universities are decreasing with enrollment, and they're panicking because they have their structure, they have their own city, they have whatever created for them already. They don't have enough money to sustain with the enrollment dropping, and they're panicking because they're using your money yet again inefficiently. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Wrapping up hour number 2. We got about 45 seconds left, but I want to squeeze in one more phone call before the top of the hour, so let's keep it short. But good morning. What's your name?
Hey, brother, it's Joe.
Hey, Joe. What's going on, my friend? You got about 30 seconds. Do it.
I'll make it quick. Okay, WSU is rolling into into the tech field. KU has the agriculture, Kansas has the doctors. Well, we're going to be the tech. You can have all the engineers in the world, but the reason they bought WATC was to have the men and women who could build the stuff that the engineers design.
Work hand in hand. I like that.
Right,
and that's a good way to do it. That's a good way to do it. Get the education for the agriculture side, and then have the people being able to have the tools to build it when they need to as well. Joe, I love it. Hate to cut you off short there. When we come back, State Representative Blake Carpenter. Stay here.
It's time for Reason.
But politics has been changing dramatically because more and more people have disengaged themselves and turned themselves away from the federal politics because they don't feel they can do anything. If you notice media is changing dramatically. You're not following the mainstream anymore. You get a voice. What are we going to do with our tax rates? What are we going to do with our budget at the state level? We get to not only have the voice, but we get to do something about it.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Good morning to you. Welcome into The Voice of Reason, hour number 3. The Voice of Reason right here On the Big Talker, KQAM, along with KGPT TV, channel 2610. If you're watching that, welcome aboard. Day number 3 on that as we're rolling right along. We love having you here. It's a Thursday. It's a pre-Friday celebration. Let's make it a good one. Let's work hard so that way this weekend, yeah, we can party hard. That's what it's all about. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Great conversation for the last 2 hours. A lot of fun. I think this is the most phone calls we've had in a long time, and I love it. I appreciate it. Let's keep it rolling. And as we've talked about in the last hour with some of the tuition rates and the cost of tuition for state universities, the enrollment decreasing for state universities, and the uptick in enrollment over and over and over again, year over year. When it comes to trade schools, we look at Kansas, and as I mentioned, the U-Haul statistics show that Kansas is number 38 in the country last year for one-way tickets for U-Hauls transporting for migrant trends. We're struggling when it comes to bringing people to the state, and we got to find new ways and new innovative ways to create that incentive. Low taxes, less regulation. For 2 years in a row now, it was Texas. So as any smart individual who wants to be on top and wants to be the best, we should look at the states and say, hey, what are you doing that we can kind of mimic and what we can try and do the same here? And one thing that we talked about, not only is it the low taxes, low regulation, and keeping the government the hell out of your way so you can do what you need to do, it's also the idea of education. Our K through 12 education and our higher education. Now, we have the starting of some great programs when it comes to the high school students having opportunities to get a trade while they're in the high school and then work their way either through college or to use that career to take off and not even have to attend college. But when the universities are beginning to panic because their enrollment's going down and they try and figure out what to do with your tax money, or they don't lose your tax money because there's not enough people utilizing that tax money with students going into college, then we're seeing that maybe we need to look at other alternatives. And one big push has been to expand the trade school opportunities in Kansas, which I think is a fantastic idea. To talk about that and a whole lot more with what's going on in the state, with the legislative session, with what's happening with the debates happening right now, that I know we're going to get heated here pretty quickly. On the phone with us, great friend to the show, State Representative Blake Carpenter is on the line back with us. Blake, how are you, my friend?
Hey, Andy, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on today.
Hey, it's always great to get you on. First off, the last 2 weeks, it's been slow moving to get everything started. The uptick with the State of the State address from Governor Brownback, I have to get your take on in a second. But overall, the last couple of weeks, so what's been introduced? What's been happening? It's been kind of quiet up there so far.
Well, it's been about, like you said, a week and a half. State of the State was last week. The State of the Judiciary was yesterday. And so that was pretty entertaining, to say the least.
Yeah, where they asked for more raises for judicial salaries.
Yeah. Where the chief of the Kansas Supreme Court, who makes like $145,000 or $150,000 a year, gets up there and says we need a $10 million raise for all judges. And then, I mean, most of the judges and I believe it's the district court judges, if I recall correctly, that make $120,000 a year. And so, but they are the 49th worst paid judges in the United States. And so, I got one real simple solution. If you basically, they're experiencing what every single other state agency is experiencing right now, the prisons, the highways, everybody else.
Sure.
What's going on is we're funneling basically every single dime into K-12 education, and there's nothing left for any of these other state agencies. And so the simple solution is, if he wanted a pay raise, then the Kansas Supreme Court would allow the legislature to do its job and actually appropriate the funds where we need to appropriate the funds,
sure,
so that these clerks and non-judicial staff can actually get their raises like, I would love to give them. But unfortunately, we just don't have that ability because, well, that $1.2 billion tax increase, I mean, it got spent immediately last year. And $280 million went to education last year, and then another $380 million went this year. So it's okay. Well, we're dumping hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions more into K-12 education, but yet at the same time, our prisons and child services and other entities like that are feeling the brunt of us basically, to a certain extent, neglecting giving them funds, and it's because we're funneling them all into just K-12 education.
Well, and last year we gave them a 2.5% increase because they came into us and they asked the exact same thing, where they wanted more, that they weren't getting enough, that many of the employees under the judicial branch at the state level were under the poverty line for the family of four, and they're struggling, having to make ends meet, having to work other jobs, and we gave them the 2.5% increase like they asked for last year. It's almost reminding me, and we talked about this in the first hour, it's reminding me a lot of when you give the bully what he wants, then you know that you're easy pickings, and as long as they get away with it, they're going to continue to do it. They've asked for more money for education. They've asked for more money for their judicial branch. We have other obligations, like you just mentioned, all across the state that we haven't been able to address over the last few years because of our financial tightness. And right now, our tightness has not gone away just because we've raised taxes. That does not give them the right to ask for more money right now.
Well, the thing is if you look at the budget, for instance, if you look at Brownback's budget, he wants to increase spending over the next 5 years. Well, what they show you is the next 2 fiscal years, which we're in the black. But then in 2020, like what was passed in last year's budget, we're already in the red again. And so it's like, okay, so how are you going to keep the budget afloat here? Are we going to pass taxes again in 2020 or tax increases again in 2020, or are we going to cut the budget? And you can either do some variation of that, or you can take the money that we have now that we are sitting on in reserves, instead of spending every single dime like the legislature loves to do, we instead put that into our rainy day fund and weather the storm a little bit better than if we have a zero ending bank account balance by the time we get to 2020.
Could we haggle with them and say that if you want the raises for the judicial branch, then fine, but you got to waive the obligation for the finances for education?
Yeah, there's no way that would work.
Well, it was worth a shot at least. It's another thing that's just piling onto it because everybody wants their goodies, and even though, like you mentioned, we've already used up the tax increases that we had last July and what we just kicked in with for January a couple weeks ago, they want more, and they think that now we're just rolling in dough and we can spend on whatever we want to. So that's an issue we're going to have to address. It's going along with that. Where is the discussion with education debate right now? The finance. I know we're not going to come to any conclusion until the end of the session this year, but are we making any grounds with it? Are we beginning to draw that line? Are we beginning to create that constitutional amendment? Where are we at right now?
Well, I'm not on the K-12 education committees or anything like that, but they're working behind the scenes right now to try to come up with a solution. And I don't know what that looks like as of right now. I don't know if they're going to give millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars more into K-12 education at this point. So it'll be interesting to see what they come up with. I don't know if the legislature leaves, though, without giving some sort of money to K-12 education, because this is an even number year, so it's 2018, so it's an election year, and according to the Kansas Constitution, we are bound to the 90-day rule. Now, the 90-day rule doesn't apply in an odd number year like 2017 when an election isn't going on. We could stay up here for 365 days in 2017 if we really wanted to, but obviously we'd be using taxpayer dollars to do that, so that's not something we would want to do. So we're not actually bound to that 90-day rule in the odd number year, but we are in the even number year. So if we end up hitting that 90-day mark this year, then at that point we have to end session, leave, and then get called back for a special session by the governor because of the Constitution.
Do you think it's going to be any more difficult this year after the State of the State, with Governor Brownback making the claim that he, with the budget that he had proposed and had laid out for giving the additional $600 million to education funding, which many conservatives were not happy about. It, of course, didn't go far enough for the Democrats, who want more than that. He really gave them their cake to allow them to eat it, too, at the same time, with giving them the spending increase without giving them a tax increase so they can go back to their constituents for a midterm election, but with kind of honestly betraying a lot of the conservatives in that sense, wanting to try and block this and fight it in alternative ways. Is that going to make the discussion more difficult this year once it comes out of committee and onto the floor?
I don't know how much validity Brownback's proposal holds at this point with the legislature. I don't know of very many people who are very I don't know of anybody that was happy after the State of the State address, honestly. So it's very interesting that it seems like Governor Brownback did a 180-degree turn here in his final year in office and just, here, we're just going to throw as much money as we can, and it's going to be over 5 years. Now, see, the thing is due to how the court worded the last case decision that they came out with, I don't know if this 5-year plan and the hundreds of millions of dollars going in over that 5-year plan is going to work, because I think they want this thing immediately. And not only that, but I mean, you have to look at, so the plaintiffs for the school districts are asking for $1.6 billion more dollars into K-12 education to have it adequately funded. Now, there's no way we can come up with $1.6 billion. So that's why I think you're looking at the $600 million mark, which is what the state school board and the 3-judge panel roughly came up with, was the $600 million. And last year, the Democrats, so my understanding is at least half the Democrats want to go full bore. We need to put $600 million in this year or more, because they basically came back and said, well, we told you it wasn't enough last year, and so we regret our vote and we want more now.
Right.
And it's oh my gosh, and
it never ends.
I don't know where they're. I don't. Yeah, it never ends, and I don't know where they're coming up with all this money. That well, obviously taxpayer wallet, but I don't know where they're going to get it from. Property tax. I mean, that's the only thing that hasn't been increased in the last several years. So it's very frustrating, and it'll be very interesting to see where this debate goes. Because I mean, as you well know, the legislature, every day is different, and it seems like the flow is just every which way, and you don't know how it's going to turn out.
No, of course not. We're not going to know until the final bill at the end, when we're trying to override a governor's veto to increase taxes and increase spending all over again. We got just a few minutes left here. I do want to ask, I know that you focus quite a bit on the Second Amendment issues for the state. There was a story that came out a couple of days ago discussing the Second Amendment in the college campuses, the concealed carry on campus and the campus carry, and the move to try and repeal that, but how that may not gain any traction this year, and primarily for the fact that the majority of legislators are still Republican, and we're in a deep red state that likes our guns. And in a year that's during midterm elections, they may not try to push that too terribly hard. Have you seen anything in that sense this year yet?
Well, let me ask you this question. Have you seen the OK Corral happen yet in the last 6 months at a college campus?
Well,
no, okay.
Not yet.
Well,
not yet.
Yeah, there we go. So the longer this law stays in effect, which we knew would happen, the less likely this law has of being repealed. Because if you look at when concealed carry was originally allowed via licenses in the mid-2000s here in the state of Kansas, then I mean it was the same doomsday predictions. Oh my gosh, there's going to be gun battles in the street. It's going to be so horrible. And then when it became law, nothing happened.
Sure.
Same thing with constitutional carry in 2015. When it became law, everyone was, oh my gosh, this is going to be the worst thing since sliced bread. Well, sliced bread's pretty good, but you know what I'm saying. So the thing is that every time there's a doomsday prediction, there's massive fear and panic, but yet there's none of these predictions come true. So the left really likes to rile people up and try to get these things repealed or not happen at all before they ever go into effect. Because when they go into effect, well, whatever their predictions were just aren't happening.
Sure.
And so it disproves their side and makes them look really bad. But so I would say that it has less of a chance of getting repealed this year, but there are still individuals in this legislature who want to have that debate, who want to have that fight, and I'd be more than happy to have that fight with them. And there's a lot of, I would say, Republican legislators who do not want to have a gun debate on the floor this year because they do not want to have to take a principled stand on gun rights and go back to their voters and say, well, I decided to vote for gun-free zones, or I decided to vote for stickers on doors because I just don't think that concealed carry is very safe, or whatever the issue may be.
Exactly.
And so basically what I'm hearing here in the legislature is that no gun debates, and if they do come up, it'll be items like Representative Whitmer's Eddie the Eagle, which doesn't appear to be in any way germane to a concealed carry debate.
Sure. Well, I'm waiting for more stories to come out about the guns left in bathrooms and see how irresponsible the children are that actually carry them. That was entertaining for me because they happened like 3 times in a row over a 3-month span. So that was intriguing to me. We got about a minute left. We're talking with State Representative Blake Carpenter. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about the one story that's come out about the one bill being in the Senate right now, but originating from the House. A big push, and a lot of listeners are curious about this, but the agricultural hemp bill about not even legalizing it, but just creating the ability for some universities to research the impact it may or may not have, positive or negative. What's your take on this bill this year? Because I think it's the same one, it sounds like, is what they tried to push last year.
Well, I'm in support of this bill. I mean, it has, if I recall the information correctly from last year when we heard it, it has 0.03% THC inside this hemp crop, and it's used to make various items like rope and other items like that. I'm pretty sure that you can actually even put it in food and stuff as well, like granola bars. But the thing is that, I mean, last year on the floor, I said you could probably go smoke an acre and you still wouldn't get high.
Sure.
And so the thing is that it's very difficult. It's not marijuana, and you wouldn't be able to go out and just smoke a field, and obviously that's impossible. And you wouldn't get that same high that you would with the marijuana plants that has the concentrated THC and various levels, and depending on how they manufacture it nowadays, could be very, very high in THC.
Sure. No, absolutely. Well, it's interesting to see, and I'm really excited to hear. Hopefully this one does go through the baby steps in order to get the research and then be able to move forward with it as a potential new revenue source for the agricultural community and for farmers in the area. Blake Carpenter, State Representative, always great to get you on the phone, my friend. Keep up the fight. It's going to be a brutal session this year, and you guys keep doing what you're doing. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Andy.
Always a pleasure. State Representative Blake Carpenter right there. We'll take one more break. We'll get your thoughts and calls when we come back. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back in, Voice of Reason. Thanks again to State Representative Blake Carpenter joining the program in that one. Coming up after the bottom of the hour, we're going to talk with Jeff Anderson, the new secretary for the KDHE, Kansas Department of Health and Environment, as he's been recently appointed by Governor Sam Brownback. We'll chat with him about the department and what he's doing there. Let's go right to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name? Oh, I guess we lost him. That's all right. You can give me a call back, 721-8255-721-TALK. You're more than welcome to do so. It's great information as we learn about what they're fighting for at the statewide level and what we need to be aware of, how we can counter this. What did you just hear? That we have agency over agency, department over department asking for more money. We have the tidiness, quote unquote, that we need to clean up after a few years of a tight budget. And yes, whether you agree with Governor Brownback or you disagree with Governor Brownback, we've had a very tight budget in the state of Kansas. We've had some financial difficulties. Not always our fault. And I would say 80% of it's not our fault, even though they like to blame Governor Sam Brownback, but that's not the case. The truth of the matter is that we had outside forces affecting it, like, low commodity prices. We had a recession that Barack Obama did not get us out of and be able to create jobs. What's happening now? Conservative principles coming in saying we're going to cut taxes. Bam! 18-year unemployment rate in the state of Kansas. We're going to cut your taxes at the federal level. Bam! Record number Dow. Record number this. Record number that. We're seeing the Dow close every single day higher and higher. It's grown faster than what Barack Obama saw in a 7-year span. We've seen it grow in a 1-year span. We're doing fantastic things that we need to be proud of, and we need to use that momentum to be able to create some energy in the state as opposed to just, let's just increase taxes and kind of counter what the federal government's doing, hope that it works out on our end, and then when the federal economy actually takes, allows us to do something great, then we take claim for it by high taxes and high regulations. It's not going to work. It's not going to happen. Now is the time that we can act and not allow these guys to ask for every little penny that they want to just because they have the opportunity to do so. Bottom of the hour news coming up. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
Republicans and Democrats accountable. This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM, along with day number 3 on KGPT TV, channel 2610. Appreciate those guys partnering up as well as we're advancing conservatism on a daily basis. The fastest growing radio station in the entire state of Kansas. We love it. We appreciate that very much. Let's go right to the phones here as we talk with our next guest. Really excited to have him on the program. He's the brand new secretary for the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, which is kind of a critical time right now if you kind of see the state of some people's health right now and what's going on, along with the cold weather and everything that leads along with that. Mr. Jeff Anderson's with us. Jeff, how are you, my friend?
Good morning. Doing well. Thank you.
Hey, very good. I appreciate you coming on the show. First off, congratulations on the new position. It's great that we can see what the departments are doing and what we're working on as a state, because on the political side, they're crazy and they're just kind of doing their own thing, and it's always just a madhouse. But being able to see departments try and run efficiently and being able to see the benefit for the general public, that's what we're all about. So it's a tough task walking into, and I appreciate you stepping up to be able to handle it.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I greatly look forward to it.
Talk a little bit about your background a bit. What led you up to this position?
Well, my entire career has been spent on the business side of healthcare. I actually started out on the insurance managed care side of things, so know a lot about contracting with providers and hospital systems, and did that in a couple different states. I've actually lived here in Kansas 3 times, but the majority of my life has been spent in Kansas. And after I spent time on the insurance managed care side of things, I migrated over to the hospital business, where I led a physician network in Metro Kansas City and worked with the largest hospital system in Kansas City. Did that for a few years. And most recently, actually, for the last 19 years, I worked for the nation's largest hospital alliance. It was called the VHA. They changed their name through a series of acquisitions to Vizient. Over 80% of the hospitals in Kansas are in that hospital alliance. The primary thing the hospitals do in that alliance is they purchase through that alliance. But I ran the insurance company, the real estate company, the managed care division, and the energy division. But point being, and I worked on a national basis there, but I had the opportunity to get to know a lot of the hospital and healthcare leaders across the state of Kansas, which I think positioned me well for the role at KDHE.
Very good. Coming from the insurance side, I mean, you've been involved with hospitals, you've been involved with the insurance side. It's fascinating to watch the transformation over the past few years when it comes to the hospitals and how they operate, the insurance side and how that operates, and how we can mesh and make it beneficial to the public overall, especially with the debate on CanCare right now, which we can get into in a second if you'd like. But talk about how, just your opinion over the years that you've been involved with all of this, just healthcare itself, how it's transitioned and how it's morphed and how it's evolved to the point we have today, in a positive or a negative way. What have we seen kind of change-wise with hospitals versus insurance companies?
Honestly, I think the changes in healthcare, they're very dynamic, but I think they are really being geared toward consumerism. And so the patients, our population in Kansas, are benefiting, and this is happening across the country. So things are happening very rapidly with technologies like telemedicine, and you see healthcare being delivered even through local pharmacies, and things like hospitals putting up micro hospitals. All this is designed to make it easier for the patient, easier for the consumer to access health care. Mm-hmm. And actually, at the end of the day, just like in a lot of other industries, these sort of changes lead to lower health care costs. And that's really the primary challenge we've had in healthcare, is actually the cost of healthcare. So an overall answer is, I said, this is good news for consumers. And at KDHE, we need to understand that and figure out how we can leverage that to deliver more value for the citizens of Kansas, primarily through the Medicaid program that we run. Over 420,000 Kansans participate in the Medicaid program. So we have a real opportunity at the state level to drive value and really improve the life for our fellow citizens.
Absolutely. And I know that the movement to transition CanCare to more of a privatized program with Lieutenant Governor Collier's plan and working on 2.0. How is that progressing? How involved is KDHE involved with the CanCare project and working on always wanting to make that better?
Well, we're very involved. I mean, that's a lot of what we do. I think the change to working with the managed care companies was a good move. This was obviously done prior to my arrival. There's been some challenges with some of the rolling out of some of those changes. Change can be hard, but we're working hard at that. And right now, I think both the legislative and executive branches are looking at how this is going to move forward. And certainly, to your point, KDHE will be right in the middle of that in executing the responsibilities we have for the state.
Sure. No, absolutely. We're talking with Jeff Anderson, Secretary for the Department of Kansas Department of Health and Environment. The big epidemic right now has been the flu. We've seen the flu cases all over the country. It's been a madhouse this year. How many cases have we seen, or have we seen the uptick here in the state of Kansas in comparison with the rest of the country right now?
I don't have those numbers for you offhand. I'll tell you what, I've been very impressed in my brief time here with our public health department. I would certainly encourage our listeners to go to our website, the KDHE website. There's information there on where you can get flu shots. We certainly recommend that people get a flu shot. It doesn't always prevent you from getting the flu, but it certainly minimizes the effect or impact should you unfortunately come down with the flu. So I think we're in a really good position at KDHE with our public health department. One of the things under KDHE, and so we're certainly monitoring it, but I don't have the exact numbers for you this morning.
No, that's okay. Just it's good to get the tips and tricks out there, and whether it's washing your hands just everywhere you go to make sure you don't take home that bacteria or those viruses. It's scary because I've never seen the stories like I have compared to the last few years on the flu outbreak, on how many people are getting it, how many people are getting deathly sick from this or even dying from it, and hopefully we're not seeing too many cases like that in Kansas.
No, I don't think that's the case. But again, just starting this week, that is something I've got to look more deeply into. So
just trying to get the transition in there. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Talk to us a little bit. We got a few minutes left with you here, but talk to us a little bit about the big discussion in one case about the argument to expand Medicaid, which I don't want to get into that debate right now, but talking about the availability for rural hospitals and just your going into this position and what you've seen and your overall diagnosis between the big hospitals in the city. You've talked about how the accessibility is beginning to get better as we start off with smaller hospitals, smaller clinics in the areas we're spreading out, and the accessibility to the general public. Are we on a good trend to get the resources we need to smaller hospitals in rural communities or smaller clinics to allow them to have the resources they need to stay open? Where are we at with that? Or are we starting to see those slowly fade away and the more focused on centralized, bigger hospitals?
Well, I certainly have always agreed with the notion that healthcare is local. And what I mean by that is, so what's happening in a state, say on the East Coast, may not necessarily be relevant to the state of Kansas. It's a different environment. And so we have characteristics that you just mentioned where we've got a lot of rural environments. So we need to make sure that what we're delivering in the state of Kansas works for Kansas. But you're right, there's a lot of acquisitions across the country where larger systems are acquiring smaller hospitals feeling the need to sell, just to survive. I think some of that will continue for sure. At the same time, very much my department, what we're looking at is increasing access to the patient, making it easier for them to access the system, making it easier for them to navigate the system. These are areas where we can improve. I mentioned telemedicine previously. I mentioned the ability to get care at some of these alternative locations. What I mean by that is not the traditional hospital, but but surgery centers or ambulatory centers, I think you're going to see more and more of those. And whether those are done by the rural hospital or in partnership with the larger hospital, sometimes you don't need to acquire the rural hospital, but rather they can form partnerships. And we've seen examples of that in this state where there wasn't an outright acquisition, but you develop partnerships. And I think actually those sort of partnerships we're going to see on the rise to make it work specifically, like you said, in rural Kansas.
Very good. Well, it's all about, as you mentioned, getting that accessibility, the prices down for the consumer, and for us to be able to take care of ourselves, which is it's very much needed. So I appreciate that. It's going to be a big debate, and you guys are going to be relied on heavily this year when it comes to the discussion on what the state government's going to do as compared to privatized or public insurance and public government and healthcare, and however that's going to fall into place. So I appreciate what you do, my friend. Good luck to you, and congratulations on the new position. It's going to be a lot of fun. To look forward to chatting with you again real soon here.
I look forward to that, Andy. Thank you very much.
Hey, appreciate it very much for coming on the show. That's Jeff Anderson, now new Secretary for the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, as talking about what to do with our health care in the state of Kansas. We'll get him back on the show again at a later time as he gets settled in and we have some new discussions when it comes to Medicaid and some of the other issues. Your thoughts and calls. One more break. We'll open up lines to you as we wrap up the show today. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
To the 700,000 plus DACA kids, we're not going to leave you behind. We're not going to let this end like it is. And to those who've been desirous of a more secure border, you're going to get your something too, because it has to be done together. I don't think you can do DACA without border security. I don't think you should. I think we should be making a down payment on merit-based immigration.
The Republican Party says it's a party of the family. Well, we need to strengthen all families. I also think that we're all made in the image of the Lord. And when we treat these people as somehow numbers or goals without thinking of them as people, we fall short as a nation. And I know people want strong borders. I know they want immigration reform. I am for strong borders and immigration, but we cannot project an image that we don't love our friends and our neighbors who are part of our culture.
There it is, the Republican. You would think by hearing those clips that'd be the progressive Democrats. Oh, don't allow the immigration thing to go through. Tomorrow is the deadline for them to either extend the budget out for a few more months or for them to shut down the government. Make your phone calls to your legislators, to your congressmen and women. Make the phone calls, make the phone calls, make the phone calls. Do not allow them to waver on this DACA deal. That's their importance, which, isn't it fascinating? The progressives and the Democrats, they are so adamant about relieving the DACA and giving amnesty for these individuals that they're willing to shut down the government, and they're willing to try and harm. I'm not saying the government shutdown is going to harm anybody, because it really doesn't. It shuts down every night and every holiday and every weekend, but they're going to try and make it as painful on the American people as they possibly can, because that's who their priority's for. And then you hear, I love the comment. Can we play this quote again? That was Lindsey Graham, the first audio clip. Lindsey Graham talking about taking care of these individuals.
To the 700,000 plus DACA kids, we're not going to leave you behind. We're not going to let this end like it is. And to those who've been desirous of a more secure border, you're going to get your something too, because
we're going to fight for you. If you're a dreamer, don't worry. We're going to stand up for you. We're not going to turn our backs on you. We're going to fight. We're going to fight. We know exactly what we're going to do. We know exactly our agenda. And the guys that want secure borders, you guys will get something too. You'll get your something too. I don't know exactly what you're going to get, because that's not my priority, but you'll get something too. He did the same thing with John Kasich with his comment.
The Republican Party says it's a party of the family. Well, we need to strengthen all families. I also think that we're all made in the image of the Lord. And when we treat these people as somehow numbers or goals without thinking of them as people, we fall short as a nation. And I know people want strong borders. I know they want immigration reform. I am for strong borders and immigration, but we cannot.
I'm for that something. We can't be doing that. We can't. No, we can't. I get it. I'm kind of sort of something with it. But we can't be turning our backs on these people. We're just treating them like numbers. Let me tell you something, John Kasich, and any other progressive out there, including John Kasich, as he is one himself. The government cannot individualize 320 plus million people that are here legally and living in the country as an American citizen, and then personalize every other immigrant that's coming here illegally as well, as an alien, as a foreigner, someone who's not supposed to be here, along with refugees and any other visa that we have. We cannot personalize it. Yes, every man, woman, and child is created in the image of God. And it's, of course, he always goes back to the religious argument. It's always, we can't turn our backs on them. We're not turning our backs on anybody. We are following the rule of law that has kept our country safe and prosperous and has kept the American people priority number one since the beginning of this nation. We cannot turn our backs on that. We are not turning our backs on anybody, and the government, the only way they know how to actually take care of an individual is to label them as a number. And if you want everybody, including the American citizen now being classified as the second-class citizen, to be labeled as a number, then all the power to you. I'm not okay with that. I'm not for that. That's not what I support. That's not what I do. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. We got just about a minute or so left in the show, but they're facing the government shutdown tomorrow. President Donald Trump, thinking that we'll be able to move past this and the Democrats won't try and obstruct it and block it, and that if we do shut down the government, which I'm okay with, that it's not going to fall in the hands of the Republicans, and it shouldn't. But the Democrats are manipulators, the ultimate manipulators, and they know how to make it look like it's the Republicans' fault because they're not willing to compromise. Same argument as what Barack Obama and the Democrats used when he was in office, when they threatened to shut down the government. The Republicans unwilling to compromise. They're the obstructionists. They're stopping everything we're doing. We can't get our agenda correct. We can't compromise. We can't work together. And work together, we mean you do everything that we want to, or else it's all your fault because we didn't allow it to get done. Now it's going to happen the same way when Republicans are in control. We have, might I remind you again, a Republican majority in the House, in the Senate, and in the presidency. Make something happen with our agenda, without their agenda, make them enjoy it or make them at least eat it, and then we move forward from there. No wavering on DACA, no wavering on immigration, build the wall, enforce immigration, do not allow the DACA recipients to get amnesty, and then start looking at reforming the budget. That's the goal. That's what we should be focused on. And if we're not, then we're going to lose this debate. We're going to lose this argument. We just came off a big victory with tax reform, not tax reform, but a tax cut, a major tax cut. And if we continue to try and waver, then we're going to fail. We will not get anything that we need to get done. Do not allow that to happen. Call your congressmen and women today. Let them know because tomorrow's the deadline. And if we don't do something now, then they may cave. This is your show. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. This is the Voice of Reason on KQAM and on Great Plains TV. Appreciate everybody. Have a wonderful day. We'll be back tomorrow to wrap up your week on a Friday.